Hello, everyone. Back with another fantasy football predictive analytics. Rhys Tiller with a special guest, Jeff Haseley. How are you doing, Jeff?
I am doing great, guys. Thanks for having me.
I would say there's no pressure. Last week's episode, which I don't expect that you listened to, we had David Dodds on telling stories about the early days of football, guys. There were some really good stories in there for anybody that wants to hear. Jeff, let me bring you back in memory. You remember when we would go to the Vegas retreats and we were at that early house, and David was telling us how that was a brothel house. And
Yeah, yeah, I remember hearing about that. This was the one that had kind of like the long horizontal floor plans. All the rooms kind of connected.
yep, and it looked like two houses that were glued together just
Yeah,
for a special purpose, whatever that may be.
yeah,
But
yeah. I forgot exactly where in Las Vegas that was, but I do remember the house.
yeah, I think it's been a few years, but you and I came into football, guys, the same year in '07.
Yep, '07 was mine. Yeah.
Oh man, it's gone. I can't believe how long ago. He was
Yeah. How old was Rhys back then?
two.
Two.
No,
I
not
wasn't
even
even
two.
two when he
Wasn't
came.
even two because he turned two that
Man.
November.
Yeah. Well, I mean, look at that. I mean, shoot, we're proof of time flying.
Oh yeah, OGs before there was an OG. But Jeff was known for you, Reese, and for others. Jeff was known on the fantasy football message boards. I want to say the name was Wheelhouse,
Yep,
and
that's right.
he would do all the like some numerical statistical breakdowns of like win probability or some of that stuff. Do you still do that in article form though now?
Every now and then I throw something in, like I think maybe like week 6 or week 7, I throw something into my weekly article called Fantasy Overview, and I just kind of include some stats and stuff like that I find interesting and tidbits that are, I think, thought provoking, really, and really kind of make you think. And maybe there's some stats that you didn't know about, so I try to dig those up and compile a list of different things that I think people would like.
Oh yeah, and this world, our fantasy world's getting more that way. I think like we're looking at the same problem from different angles and trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Oh
How's
yeah.
your year going?
Year's going good. I mean, I think I have maybe one or two leagues out of 8 that are just bad leagues. But the others, I'm doing really well. In fact, I in the Scott Fish Bowl, I'm in the top 15 overall. I'm number 15 out of
Nice.
1,400 different teams. So I mean, that's pretty impressive. But that's a hard trophy to win. So I'm just going to try and put my best foot forward and see if my players do enough to advance each week. And each week it gets tougher. So we'll see.
Oh man, and there's so much luck. This year has been. If there was ever a year to say that you needed luck to win it all in those big ones, I think it's this one. Just the catching COVID guys on the right weeks or wrong
Oh,
weeks, or you
yeah, you gotta have deep rosters, and you have to kind of do a little bit of preemptive pickups too on your waiver wire and look ahead a couple weeks. That's always helped me, and it's definitely helped me this year. Guys like Devontae Booker, right before Josh Jacobs
yeah.
got hurt. Well, yeah, before he got hurt, Booker was someone that I thought would be a good person to target, whether I have Jacobs or not, as a handcuff. So hopefully we'll see if we can use Booker. He's got a pretty good matchup this week against the Jets.
Everybody's a good matchup against the Jets.
Who's carrying your Scott Fishbowl roster right now?
Wow, it's a combination of Mahomes and Tyreek Hill, plus let's see, Tyler Lockett. Who else do I have? Raheem Mostert just got back, so that's helpful. But I have Josh Jacobs, as well as Ronald Jones. It's just a good overall lineup, and Mahomes and Hill with that stack is kind of putting me over the top.
Especially this past week, right? I mean, wow.
Yeah, this past week, I think there was one or two players where I got 5 points or less from, and I still had 216 something points. So it was it was a good week.
So how do you believe, we discussed it a little bit earlier, but how do you think the NFL is handling COVID?
Well, I think they're doing the best that they can. And I think what their main priority is to make sure that they get these games in. And I think we're seeing that with, even though the Baltimore and Pittsburgh game was pushed back 3 times. I mean, it was almost inevitable that they were trying to get this in somehow. And they're like, well, let's play on Wednesday. Well, Wednesday afternoon, that sounds good. Let's just get this in. We have to. I think they're doing whatever they can to do that. As far as the restrictions is concerned, with people on the sidelines, making sure they have to have their masks on, coaches and whatnot, that just seems like it's, something that they're really making sure of. But then you look at the Denver situation where, they had their quarterbacks, and I don't really know the entire full story here. Was it that the quarterbacks in the meeting were all maskless? They were not wearing masks in the meeting, and therefore, what did they get busted? And then they had to be quarantined. Is that the situation, Jeff?
There was conflicting reports. One said that, one said they all had masks on, but Driscoll, per reports, I don't want to get into HIPAA stuff, but sure. Driscoll, per reports, had it. So the other 2 were close enough contact with or without masks that they had to be quarantined for so long.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, either way, it really kind of put a damper, they hamstrung the Broncos having to start Kendall Hinton. I didn't watch much of that game at all, just a couple highlights, and I'm like, whoa, this is just not an offense that looks even remotely similar. And I'm sure the players were frustrated.
Yes. Yeah. Someone pointed out on Twitter, Broncos put up 3 points against the Saints. The Saints defense also allowed 3 points to a team led by Tom Brady, Ronald Jones, Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and Antonio Brown. So that makes me feel a whole lot better.
Yeah. Fandom does make us rationalize things, doesn't it, Rhys?
It makes me feel a whole lot better.
But the other thing to that, Jeff, I think you're right on in that how the NFL views success and how the layman fans view success is totally different. The NFL is getting paid to play games. That's why I think it was Adam Herstad that was on, and he said, well, I think that there could be a last week where they don't play as much. I was like, no, those players are paid to play, so they're going to want to play, and the NFL is going to want the TV rights for all of them to play, right?
Yeah, especially because they're not getting revenue from in-season fan totals, right, in the stadiums and such. So I mean, they gotta try and figure out things somewhere, right?
Yeah, the one thing that, and we probably talked about it on this podcast before, but if you add up all the TV deals, Jeff, and you divide it by number of teams, it's still greater than the salary cap. I know they have coaches and stuff like that, but they're making money on gear and other things that you don't feel as bad if they're clearing the salary cap before playing a game.
Yeah. Well, that definitely puts things in perspective.
That's why they want to play, right? I mean, why not?
But also, I think it was a blessing that the Steelers-Ravens game was originally on a Thursday versus it being on a Sunday, because if it's on a Sunday, you can't exactly move it back as many times.
That's a good point.
True.
So we talked a little bit about the Steelers and Ravens. Who do you think? What are your playoff? Jeff Haseley, what are your playoff predictions?
Let's just go with the conference championship games and Super Bowl.
Oh, wow. Let's see. I think it's going to come down to Pittsburgh and Kansas City and the AFC. And it's possible that we could see like a team like the Titans take out one of those 2 teams because of the Derrick Henry situation. I mean, this is like Derrick Henry season right now.
Yeah.
He's just getting warmed up. However, but let's just say they get past Tennessee, right? I mean, Pittsburgh and Kansas City are the darlings of the AFC. So I think it's going to be them, one of those 2 teams representing the AFC. As far as the NFC right now, considering the fact that Drew Brees is not on the team here with the Saints and that Taysom Hill's kind of taken over and he's gone 2-0 so far, Saints 9-2. They're leading the way right now. They're the 1 seed at 9-2. Their defense is playing really well too, especially lately. And if they can get Breeze back, and if they have an opportunity to, if the schedule goes their way, if they're able to rise to the occasion in the playoffs and beat teams like Seattle or Green Bay or the Rams, which might be a tough out in the playoffs. And we haven't even mentioned Tom Brady and the Bucs. But I think that the Saints have a good chance as any to get to the Super Bowl in the NFC, minus those other teams that I just mentioned, Seattle, Green Bay, the Rams, the Buccaneers. I would think that it's one of, if I had to guess, I'd say the Saints, and just based off of their defense and their ability to produce offense, I like the Rams. I think the Saints and the Rams in the NFC title game. And I like New Orleans there, and I'll say Kansas City again. So we got New Orleans versus Kansas City in the final, and I'll take the Chiefs. Why not? I mean, if it wasn't for D Ford's offsides call, the Chiefs could be looking at potentially, if they make it this year, they could be going to 3 straight Super Bowls.
Oh yeah.
Yes. My 2 thoughts on the Saints. They play Week 15 against the Chiefs, and that's going to be a tough out for whoever's playing them. And also, the Packers went into the Superdome on Sunday Night Football in Week 3 and beat the Saints. So I don't know if lots changed, but we still don't know if they can beat the Packers or any other great competition besides the Bucs, which we all have seen. And I do like but I also really like the Saints this year. I feel like the Saints are playing with a little bit of extra pressure, knowing this is probably Breeze's last year. I want to give them a Peyton Manning-esque ride you off into the sunset.
They've been trying. I mean, that window's been open for like 3 years now. It seems like the Saints are doing everything that they can to get him to that game, and they have not been able to do so. So maybe this is the time. Maybe third time's the charm. Who knows?
Maybe the Minnesota Miracle hit them. But on Pittsburgh, so a lot of times I'll wear Steelers gear on this show. But I think the loss of Devin Bush and the loss of Bud Dupree are big, and they feel the pressure too, because Connor's a free agent, Juju's a free agent, Watt's a free agent, Dupree's a free agent after the season. And now you're talking, which one or ones can you keep? Because, they're up against the salary cap every year. And so I don't know if I like Pittsburgh as much without those key pieces on defense. What do you think on that?
No, I mean, that's an excellent point. And, they right now have a huge target on their back. Everyone's going to be going after them. Well, they have Cleveland still in Cleveland. They play the Bills. I don't have their schedule in front of me. Rhys, you probably know a little bit better, but I think those are the 2 biggest hills that they need to climb for the rest of the year, right?
They are, because they don't play the Chiefs. They don't play this Patriots. They don't play any. I don't see any trap games besides this week against the football team. And the only reason why I say it's a trap game is because I don't know if I trust backup centers against Chase Young.
So not only just Chase Young, but everybody on Washington's defensive line.
Especially since you have Washington with a lot of time off going into that game. Jeff, here's the schedule. Football team at Buffalo, at Cincinnati, home Indy, at Cleveland.
So, Indy could give them some trouble too. But at Cleveland, I don't know if they would rest their starters if they're 15-0 in that game, heading into that game. But I mean, shoot, if you're the Steelers and you go 16-0, you're going to be upset if you don't win the Super Bowl. It'll be like a lost season if that's the case. And like you said, Jeff, there's a lot of injuries they need to overcome. And again, they have that target on their back. Teams are going to be gunning for them, and they're going to get the best teams, of course, in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I would say, I put this out on Twitter today, and this is just my view of their receivers. Ben seemed to lose confidence in Deontay Johnson and Claypool midway through that game. So he started just peppering Juju, and on the big throw to James Washington went in, Deontay Johnson came out. And so I don't know how eager they are going to be to let Juju walk. May not have a choice, but
I mean, they've got some decisions to make for sure in the offseason, and this is one of their opportunities here to get another trophy for the Steelers and for Western Pennsylvania. My goodness. But Yeah, and Roethlisberger doesn't have very many years left either.
Oh, no. But I also think one thing that nobody on the Steelers organization is talking about, Roethlisberger is going to count for over $40 million against the salary cap next year.
Unless they redo his deal and kick the can again, and then you end up with the situation like the Patriots where it takes you a year or two to unspin it. Jeff, question. We talked a little bit about playoff, and this one's kind of a tongue-in-cheek question for you.
Okay.
You look at the numbers pretty strongly. Who do you have coming out of the NFC East?
Well, right now it's the Giants, right? If I had to pick a team that is strong defensively and can get it done offensively, I like Washington.
Yeah. I
think Washington has as good a chance as any. You already talked about a possible upset in the making against Pittsburgh this week. That their loss to the Giants could be huge, but they still have a couple games to make up for it. And I like what Ron Rivera is doing. I like their defense. He's always had a strong pass rush, and we see it again this year. So I like Washington. They just have to take care of business on the offensive side of the ball, and Alex Smith just has to do enough to make that a reality.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. They have playmakers there. They have Terry McLaurin, and they have Antonio Gibson, who you can get the ball to him in space.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex Smith should be the comeback player of the year, almost undisputably, I think. Don't you?
Yeah. I don't know. Who would be number 2 in your opinion, Jeff?
Oh, wow. Let's see. Who would that be? Someone coming back from an injury that's been strong. Why am I not having any? Names are escaping me right now.
Don't say Antonio Brown.
No, heck no. No, I would not say him. Damn. I don't know. Maybe Cam Newton, but I mean, not really. I mean, he hasn't had that great of a year. David Johnson hasn't had that great of a year. I'm trying to think of other players. Players that were hurt that came back.
Dalvin Cook, Ben Roethlisberger.
Still nothing like Smith, though.
Yeah, I mean, Alex Smith, I think, has this wrapped up. Who else? Who else was hurt last year? I'm drawing a blank.
There's nothing good, though. There's nothing that pops out like that. I mean, this 37 years old. He had like 17, 18 surgeries since he hurt his knee. I mean, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, no kidding. I mean, he was on the I don't want to say on the deathbed, but it was pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, he had some decisions that needed to be made. Do I want to rehab this in the effort of coming back as an NFL quarterback, or do I want to rehab this just as being a human? And I think he kind of had to start that, at that level and then work his way to a quarterback. And it's really remarkable for what he's been able to accomplish.
Oh, yeah.
And he was thrown into action then again, when Kyle Allen went down. So, I mean, it's the cookie is crumbling in his favor right now.
Oh, yes.
Easy to root for as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's got a good division to be in right now.
Well, on that note, what's funny is everybody calling for Carson Wentz's head, but he costs them like $50 million next year to cut or something crazy because so Philly's stuck in that same situation. Dallas has paid everybody but Dak, and now they're stuck in a bad situation. I kind of cheer for Alex Smith and Ron Rivera. Culture's everything in the business world. You've been there, I've been there, and I think it's the same thing for football locker room as well, right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, absolutely. And it looks like, when he took over that team, there was all those issues that we were having with the front office and everything. So he had a lot of adversity to overcome. And I think he's doing a great job. And hopefully we'll be able to see the fruits of his labor with the Washington football team leading the way in the NFC East. Someone's got to win it. But, I mean, Washington could, especially if they can do some damage against Pittsburgh this week, they could start to turn some heads if they're not turning them already.
Yeah. Well, for the football team, what I'm surprised neither of you have mentioned with Rivera, he's going through cancer treatments for the first half of the year. And
right.
We're talking about Alex Smith coming back. Ron Rivera had cancer.
Yeah.
Yeah, worried about COVID and all that stuff. And then, we talk coach of the year, and there's so many good ones, but like Flores has to be mentioned in that topic too, right?
Yeah, I mean Miami's 7-4. Who would have thought that? Cleveland too, also at 8-3. That's a little bit of a surprise. Who else would be a good coach? I mean, I suppose you can include Green Bay in this mix too as well, but I think it would be down to
LaFleur, McDermott.
Yeah, McDermott. You're right. I mean, I don't know if it's Tomlin, right? I don't think that. Andy Reid is also another popular choice, but I mean, if we're looking for someone who's kind of come in and done a remarkable job for the team that he had, yeah, you got to include guys like Ron Rivera, especially if they can win the division.
Yeah.
They won't necessarily have one of the strongest teams, and sometimes I think that is part of that coach of the year, but he definitely has a case.
Yeah.
Joe Judge also has that case because of the discipline he's brought. And if he wins the division.
Yeah. But I even think Rule, if they can win, if they can be 500, I think Carolina has a conversation there. I mean,
yeah, I don't know. I like what Matt Rule's done, but I think that ship may have sailed, especially with the loss to the Vikings last week.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, Matt Rule's doing well, and you can tell that team is pointed in the right direction. The needle is pointing up for Carolina, and hopefully they will be part of the consideration of strong teams in 2021.
Oh yeah, talking about 2021.
So let's shift to fantasy aspect. Who do you believe will be the top 5 redraft 8? Who would be the top 5 in redraft ADP next year?
Oh man. Well, running backs are so popular, right? It seems like everyone wants a running back in the first round, but I almost wonder if waiting on running back or at least drafting maybe one in the first like 4 or 5 rounds might be a better decision. Shoot. I mean, do you put Dalvin Cook there? Do you put Christian McCaffrey there? What about Alvin Kamara, Derrick Henry? Now you have newcomers, James Robinson, Antonio Gibson. You've got Josh Jacobs there as well. Aaron Jones is always strong. I mean, I don't even know if there's a true number 1 pick. There isn't. I don't know if Christian McCaffrey fits that bill. I don't know, man. I don't know if I would want to have the number 1 overall pick next year. That's early. It's very, very early, but I don't know. I mean, the guys that I just mentioned, I would say in the first round, those are all first rounders, right? I haven't mentioned any wide receivers or anything, and maybe you could throw Travis Kelce in there just because of the fact that the Patrick Mahomes connection is real. But you got DK Metcalf as well, along with Devontae Adams. Keenan Allen's having a wonderful year, but I mean, he's not a first round pick in my opinion for fantasy. So, it's a crapshoot right now. And I think it really depends on who you ask. Some people might say Derrick Henry. Some people might say Christian McCaffrey. Some might say Alvin Kamara. Heck, someone might even want DK Metcalf.
Right.
Or Tyreek Hill.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. That's a tough one, but maybe we'll have a little bit more clarity here between now and July and August when we draft.
Well, even Barkley is going to be a tough one, right?
I forgot about Barkley. You got to throw him in there too.
Yeah, it's just going to be tough. I think it's going to be McCaffrey and a bunch of receivers, because the other guy that needs to probably be in that conversation is a guy like Chubb, who's finishing strong. Zeke Elliott, who you never know, he'll get drafted even if it's just name value. Ronald Jones is playing well. Eckler, could have a strong finish, and we talk about him. That's why I like the question. Rhys coming on off the top rope on you, but that's a tough question right now, because the other thing is, one thing we've learned this year that we thought last offseason when the three of us talked one of these times was going QB early is not the play. Like Dak was number 1 for if he was still healthy and he was quarterback 3, or Kyler's quarterback 4. Russ was down there too. Would you go quarterback early next year?
No, I wouldn't go quarterback very early unless I could get Patrick Mahomes maybe in like round 3. that might be the only way I would go quarterback early. Otherwise, I would wait and probably get someone like a Ryan Tannehill, some safe option, or Deshaun Watson or Josh Allen might be available later, among these other quarterbacks. As Russell Wilson's going to go, Kyler Murray's going to go, Justin Herbert is probably going to go fairly early. There's an opportunity to wait. Plus, we don't even know about all these rookies that are coming out, how good they might be in their first year in fantasy, especially if they're on a good, strong offense, or at least a coach who can, orchestrate plays and a strategy for these guys. So, I wouldn't take quarterback early unless I could get Mahomes, like I said, in like the third round. I mean, having Mahomes is such an advantage. Like I said, I have him in the Scott Fish Bowl, which is a super flex league for those who don't know, where you can start more than two quarterbacks. Having a guy like him is just awesome. So I don't know. Oh, Aaron Rodgers too. We haven't even mentioned him. I mean, he's still chugging along, and he's got talent. And if he doesn't, he makes talent. So I wouldn't draft a quarterback early. No.
Well, two things that came up to me when you said that. First, when you're listening to all the running backs, I was thinking I want to be at the very end of that tail, because the reason why we're listening to so many is because they're all so close together, and it's just a matter of opinion.
Right. So why not have two strong picks fairly close to each other rather than one and then have to wait 23 something picks before you get to pick again? And it's going to be roughly the same amount of production, right?
Yeah. McCaffrey and Kittle does not look near as good as, let's say, Barkley Chubb.
Or Barkley Kelsey. Yes. I'd rather, or something like that. But
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're definitely going to have some strategy talk coming up in the off season about how to approach drafts. It seems like there's always a running back who's there later, right? Like your James Robinsons that come out of nowhere. Who else? Myles Gaskin, even for a little bit of a time, Antonio Gibson, these are guys that you can get a little bit later that have come on strong. Now, you couldn't necessarily predict that Leonard Fournette was going to get released. You couldn't predict that Adrian Peterson was going to get released, or that Darius Geis was going to be released. But here you are, and you kind of just go after talent, and that Ron Rivera kind of likes those types of running backs, right? So you had an idea, an inkling that Antonio Gibson was going to be something. Here's a guy, what was he, 6 foot, 6'1"? He's tall, and he's like 128 pounds, something like 228. So I mean, he's a bigger back, right? And he can move and he can catch well. I mean, that right there, that's a recipe for success in terms of fantasy. We just weren't sure about his experience level. But yeah, I mean, there's going to be a lot of questions, and everyone's going to have a different strategy, and you kind of have to do what works. And I mean, it's one thing for us to kind of present some opportunities for people on what they could do in the draft, but ultimately it's your decision, and just try to find your best strategy.
Well, we talked with Rich Rebar earlier this season. He mentioned we should just be looking at talent quite a few times in tough decisions, because talented players get the ball and they produce. Yeah. So they should be good fantasy options theoretically, but theory usually works quite a bit of the time.
I also like to look at the coaching staff too, as well, right? I mean, look at what Mike Davis has done in Christian McCaffrey's absence. And, that kind of says, well, maybe it's more of a system related production, right, in Carolina, which that could very well be true. But I mean, McCaffrey is still one heck of an athlete, one heck of a conditioned player. I mean, he knows his stuff. But at some point, you have to understand and realize that it's the system. Look at San Francisco.
Yes.
It doesn't necessarily matter what talent level of a running back you have. It seems like they're always going to have some sort of role, and that role is going to be fed by Kyle Shanahan and his offense. And sometimes that role is fed multiple times. And if so, you're the beneficiary of production. And, and Raheem Mostert is a good player, a good athlete, and he finally found his niche, and I'm glad that he did so. But If he's on another team, do you think he has that much success? I'm not sure.
No.
28-year-old running backs usually
don't break out. So two things you're talking about talent, Rhys. We didn't know in Gibson's 133 carries if he was really going to be talented, or James Robinson didn't know if his small school experience could translate. So on Robinson, Jeff, loaded question, telling you up front, where do you have him in your running backs next year's redraft ranking?
I'm kind of curious to see who Jacksonville is going to have as their head coach next year.
Yeah.
Because I don't think it's going to be Doug Marrone. And then the question is, well, all right, well, where does James Robinson fit into this equation? You know, is he now untouchable? Is he now the Arian Foster, you know, that Houston had, comes out of nowhere and is now this face of the franchise? Possibly. But I mean, right now, I mean, there's no other option in Jacksonville, and it's a good thing that he is still turning around, you know, turning the yards. But next year, I would say he's probably like a early second round pick.
Yeah. Running back, I think he's in the running back 10 to 15 range, something like that. But the two things that I think of is Jacksonville, at least the fans are still smarting from passing on Mahomes and Watson for Fournette. So, you know, there's going to be that got to get a quarterback when they're with the early first. Plus, Robinson is super cheap. Being a UDFA, undrafted free agent, under contract for 3 more years, it almost suits them to keep him as the starter and build in those other areas.
Right. And he's young too. He's like 22 years old.
Yeah.
So he could be the future for that team and be a big part of that. And for them to be able to build around a young running back like that, that has shown success, that's cheap. Yeah, I'm with you. Find something else. Find a quarterback too, and then start to build your team again. They had a good team. They built a good team, especially defensively, and they let these guys walk. And now it's coming back to hurt them.
Yeah, and they have multiple first round picks. You know, with the Jalen Ramsey deal and all those, they have a lot of picks, but I think being cheap and is always a good thing for the NFL. You know, they want as many UDFAs on their roster as possible.
Yeah, right.
Another thought, though, for the Jaguars, who's going to be their quarterback? I don't think it's going to be Minshew, even though I like the guy. I don't think it's going to be the mustache. I feel like they're going to have to draft Justin Fields with their high pick.
Or Lawrence. Depends on if the
Fields or Lawrence. I mean, I think it's got to be one of those two, and we'll probably get in to talk about the rookies here, right? But Zach Wilson is in the mix as well. But I mean, right now, like you said, Fields or Lawrence being the top pick, in my opinion. Jacksonville's got one win over the Jets, right?
They have one win over the Colts, week 1.
No. I mean, in terms of they have one win and the Jets have 0.
Yes.
Okay, right. So they've got one win over them. I mean, for the race to the number 1 pick, which we don't know. I mean, shoot, if I mean, you have to imagine that quarterback's going to go in the top 3 picks. Lawrence, Fields, maybe even Zach Wilson too. Right. You know, it's the first 3 picks. You always see top-heavy teams go after quarterbacks, and Jacksonville probably should go after a quarterback. And I think that whoever is their quarterback in 2021 is not on their roster right now and may not even be in the NFL.
Right. So let's talk about that. So we talked about Lawrence and Fields being 1, 2. And I'm going to throw out some names for 3, 4, 5, 6 in any order, okay? Trey Lance, I'm not a fan like a lot of people are. I just think he's raw coming out, and it's a lot to invest in a raw guy. Wilson's looking great for BYU, right?
Mm-hmm.
You also have Trask down in Florida. He's looked good. Mac Jones, who may not profile as a big-armed guy, but he's doing well in Alabama. That's just a handful. How would you order those guys?
Well, I mean, you've got Lawrence and Fields. I would say they're 1, 2. Then, I would put Zach Wilson 3. And Trey Lance, I would say he's probably ahead of Trask. But like you said, North Dakota State, right? I mean, it's kind of an iffy situation there. But I think I would still put him ahead of Trask, and I think that's kind of where the talking heads kind of have him as well. As far as the Alabama quarterback, yeah, I'm not sure if he's a first round talent as of yet, but I mean, sometimes we see that, especially come bowl season, right? And then we see more of what happens. And I mean, who knows? I mean, there could be a quarterback that decides to return back to school, and we don't know about it yet. That could elevate his status, but yeah, I would say that that's how I would rank those 5 quarterbacks.
Yeah, I was just thinking whoever the Jets want, they probably are gonna like, we're either pulling Eli Manning or we're going back to school.
Yeah, like Andrew Luck.
Yeah.
Well, my thinking on the Mac Jones, if he's not gonna be in the first round, if I'm the football team, I'd trade up into the front half of the second round, like 33, 34, draft Mac Jones and have him in quarterback competition. That's 3 or 4 ways. Just because you get Mac Jones, you really don't need a field stretcher. Because Rivera or whoever their offensive coordinator is, I don't know it off the top of my head. Whoever that is could design a system that won't make him force the ball down the field, even though that's McLaurin's strength, but he's also a good after the catch receiver. And they should also go after like Terrence Marshall, a big threat.
Yeah. But on that note, Brady's never had a huge arm. Breeze has never had a huge arm. You know, there's a lot of guys that are stars in the NFL with that big arms. Do you think we may overemphasize the arm talent, Jeff?
Sometimes, but I think when it comes to looking at some of these 5-tool players, when it comes to draft selections, I think we're looking for as much gusto or success or ability as we can, and we like that strong arm, and therefore those that have the strong arm are going to get lifted higher in terms of rankings and ratings. Can you have a successful quarterback that doesn't have so strong of an arm? Yeah, absolutely, but they're most likely not going to be a first round pick, it seems. And maybe that's why we see some of these third round quarterbacks have success in the NFL. They didn't necessarily have that strong arm, so they weren't dubbed a first round quarterback. So yeah, I think that, I mean, Russell Wilson, when he was drafted, I mean, he didn't have the strongest arm. He had the baseball arm, right? The shortstop arm. And look what he's doing. So, I mean, he's just one example, but you're right. A strong arm is important, but is it vital?
Yeah, I think we give Josh Allen too much credit because he's running. And if he was, he's got the strong arm and we're all waiting, hey, is he going to put it together that way? But to your point, Breeze was a second rounder. Brady, notoriously a 6th rounder, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of these
Kirk Cousins.
What?
Kirk Cousins.
4th round, yeah. Because that RG3 draft, he was 1st and Cousins was 4th. But there's a lot of those guys that weren't first round picks, and some of the first round picks were the ones that kind of flopped along the way.
Right. And I mean, Steve Young didn't have a strong all-star arm.
Or Montana.
No. That was actually what I was thinking of, along with like Ken Anderson, the Bill Walsh West Coast system that he had to build.
Oh yeah, Rhys is bringing in the old school stuff long before.
Yeah, man, that's impressive. That's before you were born. Impressive.
Long stuff. Before. All right, who else in the college ranks have impressed you this season?
You mean at any position?
Let's talk running back. So we're talking future NFL guys. So the top running backs, top 3 are you have Najee Harris in Alabama, you have Travis Etienne in Clemson, and then you have the North Carolina guy,
Williams.
Yes.
So yeah, I really like Williams in North Carolina, but one of the probably my top favorites running back to watch is Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
I mean, he runs with power. He's got speed and he runs below pad level. I mean, it's really exciting to watch him run. And it sure helps to be on a good, strong, positive team like Clemson. But I mean, Etienne he can do it all. And I'm looking forward to seeing what he does in the NFL. And as far as Williams is concerned, North Carolina, what's his name? What's his first name? I forget his name, but yeah, he looks good too. And North Carolina has 2 running backs that are pretty decent. And Williams being the one who is, being touted as the NFL draft pick, that can make some noise in the NFL. So, but I don't know if any of them are really kind of strong first round picks, though. Do you think?
But no, because most of us probably thought that Edwards-Helaire was overdrafted last year over Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor was a second-round pick. If you told me that those three guys are going to be second, third-round picks, that wouldn't surprise me too much, because there's other talented running backs that maybe we don't see as much because there's been fewer games.
Yeah, I mean, the first round is really turning into quarterback, defensive, offensive line, corner, and safety, and wide receiver as well. And running backs just kind of falling more into the second or third round. So yeah, I agree there. So as far as wide receivers, who's your top wide receiver? Because that seems to be a debate.
Jamar Chase.
Like hands down, Jamar Chase, huh?
My top four, and I also like Bateman up in Minnesota.
Okay.
And I like Devontae Smith and Waddle at Alabama.
Yeah, I like Smith and Waddle as well. Who's that other guy? Not Bateman. The Purdue.
Oh, Rondale.
Thank you. Rondale Moore too. I like him as well. And there's going to be an Ohio State receiver who kind of makes some noise because you always see that. Chris
Olave is the guy in that situation. He's kind of the McLaurin, the underrated guy, good route runner.
Yeah, and also we can't forget about Kyle Pitts.
Oh, yeah.
I loved some Kyle Pitts in Florida. It's going to be interesting to see which team's going to take him. You got to think about Carolina needing a tight end, New England needing a tight end. There's teams that are in desperate need for a tight end. Washington is another one. I mean, it just depends on the team that's going to make the decision. He's a first round pick.
Oh, easily.
He's a first round pick. He might even be top 10. And that might be a little high, but I would say at least 20 and maybe 15 for Kyle Pitts. And he's definitely someone that I enjoy playing.
If Hawkinson is the number 8 overall pick, Pitts is easily a top 10, especially if Patriots are in the top 10.
Ebron was a top 10 pick. But let's also remember the Patriots dropped a 3 and a 4 last year on Ossie and Dalton Keene.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you never know with New England, right? A player could come out of nowhere and be like, whoa, where did he come from? And then next thing you know, it's Dalton Keene.
Yeah.
Like, whoa. But yeah, Kyle Pitts is definitely someone that I just love watching him play.
He's dominant, and I will say Brevin Jordan down at University of Miami is really good as well. Not quite Pitts. And I really like this true freshman from LSU, Eric Gilbert. A-R-I-K is his first name. Eric.
Just like Armstead.
Yeah. So you mentioned destinations. I always think, I sure hope that Houston doesn't draft Pitts and put him in, like tight end 5 because they use so many of them, or something crazy like that. Or Arizona, who doesn't use the tight end, or, you just hope it goes to a good situation.
Right. Some GM who's really, really interested in getting a great tight end on their roster, and then a coach who doesn't use them.
Exactly.
That would be disastrous.
Oh yeah.
Good news on that front for Arizona. Arizona won't have a high enough pick for Kyle Pitts, right?
Hopefully. But Detroit,
yeah, hopefully they'll be in like the 20s, right? Like 21, 22, something like that.
Detroit doubled down, want to go the 12 personnel with him and Hawk or something. You can just see it with Detroit because that's a Detroit thing.
Yes. But you mentioned, speaking of Detroit, I was thinking about last year, there was 0 running backs saved in the first 31 picks, yet 4 between 32 and 52. So you're talking about second round running back. I can easily see 3, maybe even 4, depending on how high people are on Chuba Hubbard, if you can block for him.
Yeah.
And he can see the hole, which is kind of hard for Oklahoma State fans to.
He has bad vision.
You got to go to that side. Yeah.
But the other side of that is, Jeff, let's look at the profiles of the teams picking in the back half of the first. Most of them running back's not their need. And they're good enough franchises that they don't prioritize that position. It's the bad teams that prioritize that position and draft them high in the first round. What do you think about that as a theory?
Yeah. I mean, if you think about your back end teams in the first round, right? You got Green Bay. No, they don't need a running back really. Kansas City, New Orleans, Pittsburgh might, with James Conner possibly moving on. Tennessee.
But even
so what? Say again?
Got Carson late. Aaron Jones was late. Those teams deprioritize that position. San Francisco. Sorry.
Yeah. I mean, it's possible the Jets could do it. I think they have a later pick this year, don't they? From a trade, don't they have like 2 picks?
The Jets do, I think, and so do. There's like several teams with more than one first rounder. Even
right.
Miami depends on how much they like Gaskin.
Exactly. And Miami, we don't really even know what running back is going to mesh well with Tua yet.
Right.
We haven't really seen that come to fruition with Tua in the offense and the right running back. We haven't seen Gaskin and Tua yet. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens there. But yeah, you're right. You're probably looking at early second round when these teams that were, teams like the Jets, the Jaguars, the Cowboys, the Eagles, Washington, Detroit, Cincinnati, these are going to be teams that are going to be targeting a running back who could, potentially make a difference. Maybe not necessarily Dallas, right? Or even Cincinnati with Mixon, or heck, Jacksonville with Robinson. But I mean, the Jets could, the Eagles with Miles Sanders, probably not. Washington, no. Detroit, no. I don't know. I guess it depends on who needs a running back and when, if they want a running back and depending on what their pick is. Shoot, I mean, we could see more in the third round too, even.
Oh yeah, and I would even throw Houston in there since it seems like they prioritize running back. But I was thinking,
Chicago.
Yes, especially Chicago. But I was thinking even the macro conversation, all those teams that you just listed have invested in the running back position. And I'm saying that may be a reason that they're picking high in the first round and second round, where the teams that deprioritize that position, that gives them an advantage at times. Like the Cowboys investing in Zeke, not Dak, versus Seattle that gets Carson in the 6th round and picks up Hyde for cheap, or the Packers that gets Aaron Jones for cheap. I just think that there's an advantage to be gained. What are you thinking, Rhys?
I do think that there's a huge advantage doing that. It also depends a lot on the talent evaluators. Mixon was a 2nd or 3rd rounder in the same draft as Connor and Aaron Jones, but Cincinnati chose Mixon over him. It should show a little bit of what they value in a running back and who they think can fill that void. Sort of like how I'd love to see who the Steelers wide receiver evaluator is after what they've done and who they've drafted over them versus the Jets, who are rolling out Braxton Berrios right now.
Right. But I do like Mims.
Yes.
So last question.
Quarterback situations for 2021. Who do you think will be starting for the Giants next year?
No, let's back this up. Jeff, you put out a tweet in the last few days, right?
I did, yeah.
About all the teams looking for a quarterback, right?
Right.
And so my comment to you in there was, I think that there's going to be more demand than supply.
Right.
At a macro level, do you agree with that?
I think we see that every year,
that
there's more of a demand than there is supply. And that's why we kind of have some of these teams with these low-end quarterbacks starting. Having said that, though, it seems like there's always attrition happening, right? It's that quarterback gets hurt or it underperforms and someone takes his place and then takes over, right? It could be maybe just an ankle injury. Quarterback's out for 3 weeks, but this quarterback comes in and he's won all 3 games. And now we have a controversy. I don't know, man. It just kind of, it ebbs and flows, man, the NFL, and as far as quarterbacks are concerned. So Yeah, I put out the tweet. I listed the Jets, the 49ers, the Bears, the Jaguars. We already talked about them briefly. Washington, New Orleans, right? Because Breeze, we don't know. What if they win the Super Bowl? Is Breeze going to retire? He should, but we don't know that. Denver is a huge question about quarterback. The Patriots, as well as the Colts with Phillip Rivers. How long can he play? How long does he want to play? And then the same question for Tampa Bay and Tom Brady. Does he play another year? What happens if Tom Brady wins the Super Bowl in his home stadium of Tampa? Is he going to come back for another year? I mean, what do we do? So yeah, that was my question. And I've had a lot of people reply back to me with their thoughts. You got to think that Trevor Lawrence is in there, right? You got to think that Justin Fields is somewhere in there. You got Trask as well. Zach Wilson, you can throw him in there because these are all teams that kind of need a quarterback. So I think we're going to see, some of these youngsters coming in and starting. Now, Jeff, what do you have in terms of quarterbacks that are going to be free agents next year?
Fitzpatrick. Winston.
Yeah, always Fitzpatrick, right?
Fitzpatrick, Winston, Cam Newton, Andy Dalton, not Foles. Foles is under contract one more year, but Trubisky's not. But there isn't that much supply. See, this is my whole thought is, like, I don't think Taysom Hill is the answer. He sure didn't look it against the Broncos. And so, man, this is a tough one because where my brain was going and you were rattling off those,
yeah,
that's roughly 10 teams needing a quarterback, right? Roughly.
Yeah, roughly. Maybe even 11 or 12.
There's 3 quarterbacks that can start next year. I'm not saying which, but, as rookies, then that means you're going to get some retread action going on somewhere, right? And
yeah,
you didn't even mention Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's that safe of his job's that safe.
Right. And, I did mention the 49ers as a
yeah, you did. I'm sorry.
But I mean, Garoppolo's in that mix. But the question is he what Kyle Shanahan wants?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How about this? A hard question. We think about all those, but then we have to think of the trickle down. Does Minshew get a starting job somewhere, or Trubisky, or Dalton, or Winston? See, I still maintain that Winston's going to start football games in the rest of his career. People are writing him off, and I'm like, I just can't. And same with Cam Newton. Cam Newton's not playing great this year, but he's still going to play. He's going to be a starter as long as he wants to be.
Yeah, right. And it may not be New England, and it might not be the Saints, right, with Winston. But, yeah. What about Matthew? Is Matthew Stafford a free agent?
I don't think so.
I do not believe so. We had this question about a month ago, and I looked it up. The 2 that he did not mention, one that's probably going to get re-signed is Dak Prescott, and also Phillip Rivers. But we don't know how much he wants to move his kids from school to school, which would probably be very hard for him.
Yeah, but he probably, it's probably the whole school is his kids, but that's a different story. I mean, because he's from Jeff's neck of the woods.
Yeah. That he is, Carolina.
But so Jeff, how about this? How many years is Teddy the starter? Are they gonna look somewhere else? Or I
mean, that's a huge question for fans of the Panthers. I mean, you could probably ask the right you could ask everybody, and we'd have answers back and forth on whether or not they want to keep Teddy or move on from him. And in my opinion, I think he's a 2-year quarterback. So I think that he does play next year. Now, this might be the year to draft a quarterback because of their draft position. But at the same time, you've got other positions that you want to take care of as well. So it's a catch-22 with him. I mean, he's a strong quarterback in terms of efficiency, right? It doesn't really turn the ball over much. He could stand to improve in the red zone. But, I mean, as far as his ability to help the Panthers move the ball, I mean, he's done that. His strength is between the 20s. Gets into the red zone, that's kind of where he struggles. But they've also struggled because they haven't had a lot of Christian McCaffrey too.
Right. And
he's a big reason for their red zone percentage going up, and he just hasn't been around. If if you ask me, and people have, I say keep Teddy for another year. Let's build in other areas as far as the Panthers are concerned, and worry about quarterback later. You don't necessarily want to sacrifice or mortgage other positions just to get a quarterback that you're going to start later on.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't really like that thought process. So that's why I did not include him in that list as far as Carolina is concerned, because I think they're going to stick with Bridgewater.
All right. 3 teams. You tell me who's starter next year.
Okay.
Giants. Because I think Jones turns it over too much. If you have playoff aspirations, you can't dog on Winston and then think Danny Dimes is okay. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know what? I mean, granted, it's a different coaching staff, but I mean, he looked pretty decent when he had Barkley.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, I still think that Daniel Jones is going to be with the Giants next year.
But do you think he's the unquestioned starter?
Do I think what?
He's the unquestioned starter.
Yeah, I'm going to say yes. I think he is the unquestioned starter. I mean, they invested in him, and they're still going to stay with him, I believe, at least one more year. His window isn't closed yet.
How about Chicago?
Chicago is anyone's game. Anyone. I mean, it could be anybody. The contract situation with Foles is the highest, right? Over Trubisky?
Yep.
In terms of amount?
I think Trubisky's a free agent even.
He is.
Okay. So, yeah, no, I think Chicago is wide open.
And I think that's a great place for
It depends on what the coach wants, because it's not going to – I don't think it's going to be Nagy. I don't think he's staying.
Yeah. Well, you mean he may not get the option to stay.
Yeah, right. That's what I mean.
All right. Lastly, if Rhys retires, who starts for the Saints?
Well, you know, Taysom Hill seems to be Sean Payton's buddy, right?
Yeah.
He's the one who's giving him options and the ability to start. So maybe he sees something in him that we just haven't quite seen yet. And he's had success. He's 2-0. But in my opinion, he's closer to Tim Tebow than he is, you know, somebody else. So I don't think it's Taysom Hill, and I don't think it's Jameis Winston either. That's an excellent question. We don't know, and I don't really know if there's a veteran that's going to be, you know, that's a free agent that could come in and fill that role. It also depends on what New Orleans does in the playoffs.
Right.
I mean, it could be win and then dismantle, but I don't know what's going to happen there, and it could very well be Breeze. It could be a rookie. They could draft a rookie. It could be Justin Fields, possibly.
Fitzpatrick. Question for Rhys, since he's a Broncos boy. Who's starting for them next year? Is that Locke or someone else?
Someone else.
What do you think?
I don't think it's Drew Lock. What do you think, Rhys?
I don't know if it's Drew Lock. I hope it's not Blortles.
Yeah.
We all hope it's not Bortles.
But you think that division's good at quarterback. Mahomes, Herbert, even Carr's not bad. And so, you know, you have to have a decent quarterback to compete in that division. I think they go out and address that in some variety.
Philip Rivers.
Yeah, the Peyton Manning reunion tour. So,
well, like we already discussed, I mean, there's not really a big name veteran free agent quarterback. There isn't. Unless you look at Cam Newton or Jameis Winston. And do you really call them a big name free agent quarterback, though?
No. I'm
not so sure. So I think, I mean, shoot, they have gone through the shopping list of quarterbacks, new quarterbacks, and they haven't found one that sticks yet. But I mean, that might be the course of action again.
I talked about talent evaluators. Broncos quarterback ones are not looking good right now. They've got Paxton Lynch, Drew Lock, Brock Osweiler, Zach Dicer, and everybody else on the Broncos quarterback carousel that the CBS always plays every time a Broncos game is on.
Yeah, the only thing worse is the Cleveland ones before Mayfield. You remember all those shirts?
Oh,
Jeff,
my gosh. Spurgeon win.
Yeah. It goes all the way down to, like, you know.
Yeah.
And Couch and all those guys.
Speaking of quarterback situations, who's starting for the Browns in 2 years at quarterback?
It's not Mayfield.
I don't know, man. I barely know 1 year. I don't even know 1 year, let alone two. It's a tough one. whoever's a free agent in 2022.
Exactly. Plus, the rookie class then will be decent. Jeff, we appreciate you being on. I see that you started your own podcast that runs. How can people get in touch with you?
Oh yeah, no. Well, they can go to my Twitter account for that podcast, which is Carolina_fandom. It's all about basically it's a podcast about the fans of Carolina sports. And right now we're really kind of focusing more on the Panthers and doing recaps of their games. But this is also going to include the Charlotte Hornets, the Charlotte Football Club, which is their MLS team that was just initiated. So we've got opportunities galore to talk about Carolina sports. So yeah, that's what it's all about. And it's about meeting the fans too. Like, how did you become a fan of the Panthers? How did you become a fan of the Hornets? Talk to us about your thoughts about the team, or, whatever. There's just so much that we can do. And it's kind of more of a funny, happy-go-lucky type of scenario where, we're professional, but at the same time funny and silly. So it's a fun show, and I've got a pretty good vision for it.
That's awesome. It's great having you on.
Yes, thank you for coming on, especially at such short notice.
You got it, guys. It's my pleasure. Thanks for inviting me, and have a good rest of the evening.
Thanks, Jeff. Have a great one.